What about the doll that's in there? Because no.
Don't talk about her.
Why not? She's in a case for a reason.
What did you do? I let her out. What else did you touch? Everything.
What?
A soul. She wants her soul. Give me her soul.
Oi, it's March here. I got a thought, so I'm gonna make me a problem. Today's video we're going to discuss the last two final cases that were investigated by Ed and Lorraine Warren, two of the most influential yet controversial paranormal investigators of their time and our time. This is part 3 of a 3-part series, so if you haven't seen parts 1 and 2, do be sure to check those out. Before I get into part 3 though, I wanted to quickly summarize part 2. In part 2, I go over the infamous Amityville case, where Ronald DeFeo Jr. brutally murdered his entire family in one night. This case theoretically ruined the Warrens and their reputation, removing them from public view and media attention until the creation of The Conjuring in 2013. I break down the Enfield poltergeist case, suggesting that Janet is ventriloquist and suggesting that her family was simply looking for quick cash. Then I finally introduce my theory that many of the cases that were investigated by the Warrens were all inspired by the movie The Exorcist. Today for part 3, we're going to go over the last two cases in the Warren files: the Perron family in the Conjuring house and Annabelle the doll. The Conjuring house, and specifically Annabelle, are possibly two of the most famous cases the Warrens have ever worked on. But let's start with the Perron family. In 1971, the Perron family moved into what is now known as the Conjuring house. Allegedly, things started small. Items were disappearing, things were being scratched, and every so often dirt would appear in areas that were just freshly cleaned. The mother, Carolyn, allegedly researched the house and found that only 8 other families had lived there before the Perron family, finding that many people in those families would die mysterious deaths. Some children were drowned, hanged, and even outright murdered. But as stated in the film The Conjuring, Bathsheba is the villain in this story. Bathsheba allegedly resented Carolyn for being in the household, as she saw herself as the mistress of the house and no other woman should be there but her. Allegedly, she was a Satanist who even sacrificed her own child to Satan himself. Andrea, the oldest daughter, claimed that sometimes the house would smell like rotten flesh. The beds would rise off of the floor, and the heater would often break, forcing their father Roger to go down into the miserable basement quite often. For 10 years, the Perron family lived in that house with nowhere else to go. The Warrens did make multiple attempts to get rid of the spirits that lived there and even attempted multiple seances. In fact, during one seance, Carolyn allegedly got possessed and started levitating and speaking in tongues, and she was even thrown against a wall. After that seance, and this is not shown in the movie, Roger actually kicks out the Warrens, but before doing so, he punches Ed in the face and demands that they never come back. There they continue to live in the Conjuring home until 1980. Years later, the eldest daughter, Andrea, has written and published her own books about the experiences of living in the Conjuring house. And I will be honest, as someone who has tried to be a little bit of a journalist with the paranormal so far, who has tried to really get every angle and every degree, it is painful going through those books. So I think I'm gonna skip the books in this video, and if I do find valid information in the books, I'll make a whole separate video on them and go over what I missed in this video that I possibly should have had in this video. And instead we will move on to Annabelle. I would sincerely hope with the success of The Conjuring, Annabelle Creation, Annabelle, and Annabelle Comes Home that I don't really need to introduce this doll, but in order to break down whether or not this doll can actually be a conduit for demons, we need to actually start with its origins. When a mother bought a seemingly innocent doll as a birthday gift.
I like your doll.
Annabelle was a seemingly innocent Raggedy Ann that was given to Donna as a gift. Now, Donna suspiciously doesn't have a last name, and that is a thing with Annabelle's origins, but back on topic. Donna loved the doll, but Angie, which was Donna's roommate, noticed that sometimes when she would come home, she would find it in a different position than they had left it in. Sometimes it would be kneeling, standing, sitting with its legs crossed, or one time in a completely different room entirely. Things got worse as Annabelle started to leave notes across the apartment stating, "Help us" or "Help Lou." Lou is Angie's fiance who was staying with the girls, by the way. So you can imagine how terrified the girls were when they found such notes. Allegedly, Donna did not have any parchment paper, so she had no clue where the notes were coming from. It wasn't until one day when Donna came home and found what she thought was blood on the doll that she finally called in someone to help. She called in a medium. That medium told Donna and Angie that the spirit that was haunting their little Raggedy Ann was just a little girl named Annabelle, who had died on the premise of the apartments before it was an apartment. When it was just an open field, she died a tragic death there, and she was only 7 years old, and she was haunting the doll because she was lonely. Feeling sad for the girl, Donna and Angie allowed Annabelle to use the Raggedy Ann in order to stay in the apartment with the girls. But this only caused things to get worse, as allegedly Annabelle did try to cause harm to others. In particular, she seemed to hate Lou. One night, Lou woke up unable to move, which was most likely just sleep paralysis, by the way. But Lou watched as Annabelle went from his feet all the way up his body and started to choke him. It was then he woke up. I feel it's important to discuss what sleep paralysis is, but if you'd rather just skip this part entirely, just jump to this timestamp here. Sleep paralysis is the feeling of being conscious but unable to move. It occurs when a person passes between the stages of being awake and being asleep. During these transitions, you may be unable to speak or move for a couple of seconds up to minutes. Some people even mention that they feel a sense of pressure or choking when being in sleep paralysis states. The reason why it is even more terrifying than just that, although it is still quite terrifying, is because it is often combined with something called sleep paralysis demons. And sleep paralysis demons are exactly what you think they are. They're a most terrifying creature or shadow person lurking under your bed, staring at you from within your closet. They can even crawl up your bed, or even sometimes laying right next to you or right on top of you, all while you lay paralyzed in bed, unable to move, unable to scream, unable to do anything, while the most terrifying creature you have ever seen in your life is looking directly at you and more often than not will not break eye contact. But back to Annabelle, as that is what we are all here for. Allegedly, Lou heard noises in Donna's room one night. So when he walked in, he saw Annabelle was on the floor. So he walked towards her to see what was she doing on the floor, how did she get there. But as he did, he felt someone behind him. So quickly he turned around to see who it was, and there was no one there. Instantly, when he turned back to Annabelle, he felt a sharp, immense pain on his chest. Kneeling to the ground, he looked at his chest to find what went on, and there were 7 claw marks right there. They disappeared within 2 days. Annabelle's reign of terror allegedly didn't end here. Once she was in the case at the Warrens Museum, a young biker threatened and challenged Annabelle to harm him, that a small doll couldn't do anything dangerous. Yet later he died in a motorcycle accident and his girlfriend was hospitalized.
You've just crossed over into the Twilight Zone.
There is a theory that Annabelle was inspired by the Twilight Zone episode titled Living Doll. The Twilight Zone ran from 1959 to 1964. The intro is very, very famous. If you haven't heard it, then I'm sure you've heard of when people reference things as it's like it was from the Twilight Zone or they're in the Twilight Zone. That's essentially where that reference comes from. Now, the video I'll be linking is heavily edited, but it shows the important bits that we need for Annabelle creations regardless, so I'm sure we can all live without those extra minutes. The backstory of this episode is that there is a man named Eric who is dating a woman named Annabelle who has a daughter named Tracy. Regardless, this miserable man immediately interrogates his wife and child the second they come through the door because he sees that Tracy has a big box. He sees that Tracy has another doll. But you see, Annabelle couldn't resist buying Tracy this doll. Her name is Talking Tina, and unlike other dolls, she talks. She just isn't stationary. She talks and she seems to move as well. Now, I'm assuming that because of editing, we're missing a bunch of context on why it seems to cut to Eric telling Tina to shut the doll up. But regardless, I don't need context for trash. And I'm talking about Eric. Tracy, quite upset with him, runs upstairs and Annabelle goes after her, also upset with Eric. It cuts to Eric looking at Tina, picking her up, and she happens to tell him,
My name is Talkie Tina, and I don't think I like you.
we cut to them now having what seems to be lunch, and again, because of editing, I think we missed the context on why Tina talks trash to Eric.
My name is Talkie Tina, and I'm beginning to hate you.
Eric tells her,
My name is Eric Strader, and I'm going to get rid of you.
and Tina, the sassiest of dolls, responds with,
You wouldn't dare.
the video cuts to Eric throwing Tina in the trash, but with the vengeance of a wrathful god, Tina calls him up.
Talkie Tina, and I'm going to kill you.
Frantically, Eric goes back to the garage to look for Tina in the trash can, but finds that she is not there. He searches the rest of the house, even looking in Tracy's room, finding that Tina is somehow with Tracy. He automatically assumes that this was Annabelle. Annabelle has set this all up because she knows he hates Tracy. Yes, you heard that right. He hates Tracy with a pure passion. And the reason why is because Tracy isn't his daughter.
Daddy, please.
I'm not your daddy.
Anyway, I'm going to cut to the part where Annabelle threatens to leave Eric, and Eric, unable to cope with the idea of losing his abusive control over Annabelle and Tracy, throws a little bit of a fit and decides, well, what if I give the stupid doll back to Tracy? And Tina, just like I, says that that is enough. She really hates Eric, and that is just not enough. So late at night, it is assumed that Tina is making noise downstairs. Eric wakes up and goes, what is that noise? So he goes downstairs to investigate. But unbeknownst to him, Tina is on one of the steps. So when he steps on her, he immediately falls down the flight of steps, seemingly to have died on impact. This ends the episode with Tina saying,
My name is Talkie Tina, and you'd better be nice to me.
honestly, she's an icon. Murdering sexist and overall scummy men because they are rude and disrespectful. I stan Tina. We stan Tina here on this channel. But back on topic, the idea and root of Annabelle is there. A cursed doll, one may even say demonic doll, enters a household and starts to move and talk on its own, traumatizing one person in particular, which in this case happens to be the man of the household, causing bodily harm to them until it's too much to take and either the man dies or the doll has to be gotten rid of. But the question is, why would the Warrens make up a story of a demonic doll, especially one of a raggedy Anne that was seen as such an innocent American doll? Well, I have a small theory for that. And in order to aid this theory, I went back through all the Warren cases that have been at least documented.
That you've collected over the years.
All right, I think one of the most famous would be Annabelle.
You see, the Warrens claim to have investigated over 10,000 cases in their careers, yet there are only a few cases that are actually well documented and that people have access to. But back to the timeline of the Warren files so we can work on my theory. You see, Annabelle took place in 1970. In 1971 is when the Perron family and the Conjuring house took place. In 1975 is when the Lutz family claimed their house in Amityville was haunted and they completely abandoned their home. In 1977 is when the Enfield poltergeist starring Janet Hudson and the ghost of Bill Wilkinson took place. In 1981 is when The Devil Made Me Do It and Arnie Johnson's trial occurred in Connecticut. And in 1986 is when the Sendector case took place, where the family claimed to not know that their home was once a funeral home and claimed it was haunted by demons. Finally, in 1986 is when the Smurl family had the Warrens also investigate their home. I'm also going to discuss the order of the books of when they were released so you understand when the Warrens were essentially getting money, because they claimed that they never took money from any other cases. The only way they made money was off of the paintings Ed made and was off of the books they made. So going based off of the first book that they made that we have, Deliver Us from Evil was in 1973, The Demonologist was in 1980, The Devil in Connecticut in 1983, The Haunted in 1988, Ghost Hunters in 1989, Satan Harvest in 1990, Werewolf in 1991, Graveyard in 1992, A Dark Place was also in 92, Ghost Tracks in 2004. So, according to this timeline, and assuming that I got my sources correct, Annabelle started it all. She started in 1970, or in some cases, some articles even state 1968, but we'll go with 1970. Again, allegedly Ed and Lorraine Warren claim to have investigated over 10,000 cases in their careers, yet the only and first case that was not only documented by the Warrens, but heavily marketed is Annabelle. To this day, Annabelle is the case that defines who the Warrens are. If you don't know about The Conjuring House, Amityville Horror, The Devil Made Me Do It, Enfield, or even the Syndector or Smurl cases, then I still bet you $5 that you absolutely know about Annabelle, and not even just because of the Conjuring movies, but because of how terrifying she seems to be, making it the single case that absolutely defines the Warrens for who they are. She started their careers. She made them who they are today. Her existence, her idea, the ideology behind what Annabelle is, that any simple and seemingly innocent object, such as a doll or toy that could live in your household that you could have bought for your own child, can not only be possessed by a demon, but then used as a conduit by a demon to infest your household. They will use that doll to trick you into accepting their presence by pretending to be a young child or pretending to be an innocent spirit living in that doll, haunting that doll because they are lonely. Then they will slowly weaken you by terrorizing you daily, by slowly moving things, disappearing things, physically harming you, and then finally possessing you. Or, as Ed puts it in the movie, the 3 stages of possession: infestation, oppression, and possession. This fear that any innocent object can be used as a conduit by a demon, especially during the ages when people were so heavily religious, is a terrifying one. And honestly, I can imagine it did well for the Warrens. It was a terrifying idea that suddenly any innocent object could be a conduit for a demon, could be haunted by demons, that thing that they thought was a spirit in their doll is possibly demonic. Now, will that not only drive up the Warrens' success and give them more income, because now they could investigate more cases and get money off of it, get publication from it, get media attention from it, but now they have more people lining up their pockets because they want book deals, they want more people investigating their houses.
In Hartford, or Hartford Hospital.
Was Hartford Hospital?
Yeah, it was Hartford Hospital, honey.
And
Now, I got this information from an article, but this article states that in Ed's book called The Demonologist, Ed alleges that Annabelle actually died in an automobile accident.
so now the woman holds a seance, and she said there's a spirit of a 6-year-old girl in that doll who was killed in an automobile accident.
She was not found dead in the fields that once stood before the apartments did, and that Annabelle was 6, not 7,
Well, there was a 6-year-old child by the name of Annabelle who was killed.
and that somehow Annabelle was given as a Christmas present, not a birthday present.
A nurse had received the doll 1971 as a present, a Christmas present from her mother.
So if Ed Warren himself can't get the story straight, it makes you wonder what other stories he fabricated, what other stories did he make up, even if he himself got them right once. But let's say that in his mind, in order to just remember whatever the details were, did he just go with whatever sounded the best? Did he just go with whatever he thought just sounded right? What other stories are completely fabricated or missing details completely because of Ed's false memories, or because they were fabricated to begin with, so as a result he barely remembers what he made up? Then another issue I have with Annabelle is that Donna, Angie, Lou, the priest that allegedly threw Annabelle across the room, the biker that challenged Annabelle, and the biker's girlfriend are all unnamed fully. You would think that with the amazing detective skills that we have nowadays especially, that someone would try to find anyone, especially the biker. That person died. That should have been all over the news. That a biker challenged a beautifully innocent Raggedy Ann doll, but that Raggedy Ann is not actually innocent. It is a demonic entity using a doll as a conduit, and that doll just so happens to be in the infamous Warren Museum. You would think that'd be all over the news, wouldn't it? Yet I can't find any details of anybody. The only people that not only profit but that are mentioned in the story of Annabelle are the Warrens through and through. There is also another small issue that there is no photo of Donna, Angie, or Lou holding the doll or the doll being in their apartment. There was only ever the famous photo of Lorraine holding Annabelle outside of their house before she was abruptly put into their museum and then shortly after put into her case. So did the Warrens even get the doll from someone, or did they just buy the Raggedy Ann and decided that they needed something to get famous off of and decide to make a story out of the doll? Also, if the doll is such an evil spirit, such a demonic presence, then why can a simple box take away all of its powers? Now, I understand what the box is. It is church glass and maybe some church wood, I'm not sure. But regardless, especially because it's just goddamn glass, how can a simple box take away its powers? Now, it's important to note that the powers shown in the movies are not necessarily the powers the doll has. There is no evidence, no proof the doll can actually amplify the powers of other items in the Warrens Museum. There is no proof that it can, from within its cage, make the Raggedy Ann doll move forward or move at all. Yet it is declared to be such a demonic item that it needs to be locked up in such a way that it is a threat to everyone if it is ever released. I mean, I personally would like to see Annabelle released. I would personally like to see Annabelle out of her cage for probably more than a week, just to see what happens, just to see what chaos can occur. But I do understand that this would never happen because Tony Spera is also religious. So I know that this man knows better than to mess with demons and unholy items. To him, Annabelle is one of these, and I know as a result he would never unleash not only a demonic entity into his own home, as I'm pretty sure the museum is like close to the home at all times, but also freely in a museum with other demonic entities, spirits, and items. But I also know that would never happen because if, and this is a small if nothing were to happen when Annabelle is out, how would Tony ever explain that? How would Tony ever explain the reasoning behind why Annabelle is doing nothing once outside of her case? The reasoning could be that the case is doing its job wonderfully. It's holding back the demonic powers, and as a result, a short cycle of being outside is just simply not enough for it to regain its powers and to cause chaos again. My short and humor answer to that would be just leave her out permanently, see what happens, especially if it's a full moon, just leave her out permanently. Now you're probably thinking, Merch, I did not just watch a 3-part series for you to completely skip the allegations of Ed having sex with a minor for literal years. Where is that part? Is there a secret part 4 we don't know about? On November 19th of 2021, I found a video titled The Disturbing Allegations Against Ed and Lorraine Warren by Grayson's Projects. Not only does this amazing and wonderful person explain the backstory of the Warrens, but they also talk about the allegations. So while I could do my own research, what they have is what I'm pretty sure is all there is publicly available. So instead of me doing a video on it, you should just go watch their face instead. I'll link it down below. Although if there ever comes to a moment where I find more information, I will obviously make my own video.
Nice doll.
That's what you think.
So, what do you think? Do you think The Devil Made Me Do It case was a legit demonic possession or a case of a mentally ill child not being diagnosed and subsequently neglected by his religious parents and outright tortured as they allowed unapproved seances to be done on him? Do you think the Amityville case is a true haunting, or was Ronald DeFeo simply a narcissist and a spoiled rich boy, and the father of the Lutz household tore apart his family with his silly fantasies? Do you think the Enfield poltergeist is real? Were the children faking the events? Can the audio tapes be trusted as pure evidence of a haunting? And did Maurice Gross take advantage of a family because of a loss in his own, or was this family truly haunted? Do you think the Perron family told the truth behind the infamous Conjuring house, or do you think Carolyn also suffered from a mental illness and Andrea was and or is hoping to someday bank off the stories of the Conjuring house with her books? Finally, do you think that Annabelle is truly a conduit for a demon that has the ability to kill others even while in its case? Or do you think that's a completely made up story for quick cash and media attention? But that about wraps up today's video. Please let me know your thoughts down in the comments section. And while you're at it, please let me know what you think of my editing. If you could, I have been working really hard since my first Chloe Price video, and I've been working hard to not only grab your attention, but to hopefully get a little bit better at editing so it feels just more high quality. So don't be afraid to let me know what you think in the comment section. Thank you so much for watching. This script alone took me forever to write out, like a lot, so it would mean the world to me if you could like, subscribe, and hit the bell notification so you never miss out on another video.